I playfully slapped his face in front of his friends and said he was my doggy, but he took it seriously. It happened in a flash and I couldn't even understand why I did what I did afterwards. In hindsight, maybe slapping him and calling him my doggy wasn't the best move, but at the time it was just a joke. It's transformed our relationship in ways I never imagined. I'm really ashamed of what happened, so I'm posting this from a throwaway account and I need advice on what to do next. My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years now and we're currently living we were together, but right now I don't think that still stands. I think we need to talk about it. I know I have this habit of pushing things a little too far, but it was supposed to be a playful slap and comment. I never thought it would blow up the way it did. I've known my boyfriend, Ben, for years before. We even started dating during that time. I was always the one joking around and teasing him a little, and he'd play along. He wasn't the kind of person to do things on a grand scale. Sometimes he was a bit shy to do certain things, and I teased him about it regardless. He always puts on a smile and never fails to laugh at my jokes. We had a lot of fun together, and when we finally started dating, it felt like everything fell into place. We weren't one of those couples who had a fairy tale beginning. We met through mutual friends, hung out in groups, and one day just sort of happened. I like that about us. We were normal, we were real, but that day, it all came together for him. Everything crumbled before my eyes. The thing is, Ben and I both work at the same company, but we're definitely not on the same level. I'm actually the head of his department, which made things complicated in ways I never expected. From the outside, it's just a job title and a difference in position. But it affected so much more than just our professional lives when we first met through our mutual friend. He was working at a different branch of the company, but a few months later he was transferred to our branch. We were so excited about it and thought maybe the universe was on our side. I was so happy about the news and I was really looking forward to working with him, and so was he. But then everything turned sour when we first started working together. I wasn't the head of his department yet, but I got promoted a few months later because my hard work paid off. So when I became the head of Ben's department, I saw it as just it was another step forward in my career, and I saw it as that, nothing more. But that's where things started to get tricky. Before Ben resumed his role at the head branch where I was working, our relationship was pretty serious. We were going to work together, so we decided to take the next big step, which was to get a house together. And no, I don't mean rent. We bought a house together and moved in together. We had this amazing night before our first day at work together, given how excited we were. Before we left the house that morning, I told Ben that he should keep us a secret at work. He asked why I couldn't really give him a good reason. I told him that I didn't want to rub it in everyone's face because I'm trying to maintain a clear distinction between my personal and professional lives. He was very understanding and supportive. He was really understanding and supportive, so he did exactly what I asked. I wasn't trying to hide that I was proud of my boyfriend. Ben is very handsome and he has a lot of girls interested in him, even at work, which always annoys me. The point was that I love the spotlight and I love the attention. I wanted to keep the attention on me. I'm also very beautiful, and I really enjoy the idea of people mistaking me for being single at work. I didn't want to give them any idea of us dating yet, so I also told Ben he shouldn't mention it. If he did, it would ruin our relationship. I told him that when the time was right, we would tell everyone, so he didn't see any problems with it. He really loved me and would do anything I wanted. I used that to my advantage to keep his mouth shut. Sometimes during work breaks, we would still share a little time together. Like going to eat, and maybe if we had the chance, we'd talk to other people, but when I got promoted to being his head of department, it became worse. I didn't want him near me at all, but other girls were always trying to make moves on him, and I hated it so much. Maybe it's because of the way he dressed. He had a good sense of fashion. He was fashionable and handsome, so I told him to tone down his outfits and that I liked and admired him more when he dressed more simply and less fashionably. Even though it didn't make sense to me, I was surprised that he agreed, as long as it made me happy. I think I was being toxic, but I always told myself that a little bit of toxicity was necessary to maintain a fun relationship. However, I took my power as his boss to a whole different level. For example, in meetings, I'd often catch myself being overly critical of Ben's work. I'm not sure if it was. Maybe I expected too much from him, or maybe I felt like I had to maintain a sense of authority over him. Or perhaps I wanted to make it appear as though we disliked others so no one would ever suspect that something was going on between us. Either way, it was stupid and I could tell it was bothering him. I noticed that he started to withdraw in group discussions. He never said anything outright, but there was this underlying tension that I couldn't ignore. Outside of work, things weren't much better. I'd find myself carrying the same energy home, talking about work in ways that blurred the lines between our personal and professional lives. And at work, there were days when I'd come home frustrated. Instead of leaving it at the office, I'd bring it up, venting about some mistake he'd made or some task he'd left unfinished. It wasn't fair, but at the time, I didn't see how it was affecting him. I really tried to maintain a balance, but it was difficult. I was in a higher position, so I was under a lot of pressure. The more I tried to separate my work and home lives, the more they seemed to blur together. Our work relationship reflected how we interacted outside the office. I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. One day during company break time, I saw him leaving the building with 3 of his colleagues. They were all female and looked like Barbie dolls. They wanted to get their nails done just as they were about to get into the elevator. I told them to hold the elevator open. Ben did that. But I could see he was reluctant, even though I was already furious. I just reached my boiling point with this action. I asked him where he thought he was going, and he said they were going to grab something to eat. I was boiling over. I usually was the one who prepared the meals we both enjoyed eating at work, but since my promotion, I didn't have time for that anymore. Plus, I had to eat out with the other top heads to maintain my status while also planting seeds for future favors, backings, recommendations, and promotions. I didn't care that I couldn't make food for Ben anymore if it meant him hanging out with those witches. I would have preferred he woke up 2 hours earlier to prepare a meal. In my usual erratic manner, I got really angry and accused him of being a lazy worker who spent a third of his time being a womanizer right there in the office. He told me in response that he didn't have any work left to do. I lost it when I saw that he hadn't done everything he needed to do. I even told him that he had a lazy mentality. If he was done with the job at hand earlier than anticipated, he should request more. The girls he was with ran off in fear of receiving my wrath. Ben looked at me with contempt. I imagine he had a lot to say, but he couldn't. He let out a stifled apology and walked back to his desk. There weren't many people in the office. A lot of people had gone to have their lunch, but that didn't stop the news from spreading. I went to eat with some of the higher-ups. When I came back from my break at the end of the day, everyone was still talking about how I'd scolded Ben. After that, I felt like there was a huge gap between us. I don't think Ben spoke to me for about a week. He'd wake up really early and go to work, and then come back late at night when he was buried in work, so I didn't have much to complain about. In the office, he tried to avoid me, but I still found a way to criticize his ideas and put him down. Not once did he fire back at me. He apologized and said he'd work on it. I think I was just feeling pretty powerful at the time, and I guess I was a bit drunk on it. This cold treatment went on for almost a month until one day during a meeting I told him the idea he was pitching wasn't good enough. That's when the manager, who was present, shut me down. He said that Ben's idea was. It was the perfect idea, and I asked Ben to go on. I felt like I could snap somebody's neck. What made me want to explode even more was when I saw the manager talking and laughing with Ben after the meeting. It was like nothing had happened. People had started calling me Ben's Bane and Jezebel. I was pretty rude to a lot of my subordinates, but I was really focused on Ben. I went to see him after his chat with the manager and asked what they were talking about. He told me that it was confidential and none of my business, and I lost it. I told him it was all his fault that everyone was calling me Jezebel. I told him that if he just behaved himself at work, we would all get along. Just then the CEO walked in with the manager, and I wore a big fake smile. He was there to see Ben, but he was glad I was there as well. I switched to my kissing mode. I was a bit disappointed that I wasn't the one he was looking for. Besides, why would the CEO want to see Ben? He said he'd been keeping an eye on Ben for some time, but that the last month had shown he was dedicated to the company. He was the kind of man who put in the extra hours. That's why they were offering him a promotion to a position above mine. My eyes nearly popped out of my head. Ben was happy to accept, and I had to play along and congratulate him. The manager asked me to join him for lunch, and being the suck-up that I am, I went along with it. By the time I came back from lunch, I was thinking about the best way to ask him to turn down the promotion using my usual manipulative behavior. That's when I saw Ben talking with a few friends. I saw Ben chatting with a few friends, and they were all laughing. I suddenly switched to girlfriend mode and walked over to them. Everyone went silent. I congratulated Ben right there in the open and playfully patted his shoulder. One of his friends asked in confusion, "You hate Ben, right?" I laughed and said, "No, he's my doggy." I was trying to be sweet, but Ben didn't take it that way. He had a tense face and gave me a clear warning. He said I was not special to him and that I couldn't do that. I was taken aback. I tried saying, but he cut me off by saying that we are nothing and that I meant nothing to him. I was so mad to spite him that I suddenly told everyone that we were dating. Everyone was shocked to hear this. I went on to say that the only reason he got the promotion was because I put in a good word for him. But since he wasn't grateful, he was going to reject the promotion. Ben laughed and said he got it fair and square and that we hadn't been together for a long time. He then frowned and asked if I thought he didn't know I'd slept with some of the bigwigs for my promotion. Everyone gasped, and even when I tried to deny it, he told me that he knew I was still doing it. He said he had pictures and was about to pull out his phone, but then I fell on my knees and grabbed his hand with tears in my eyes. I began begging for forgiveness, but he wouldn't budge. He felt so insulted that he began recounting everything, how I gaslight him and that he always tried to let it go, calling it the necessary compromises one has to make for a relationship. But he was the only person that saw this as a relationship. He said I was a user. He said I only get close to people to use them for my own gain. He said he'd rather die than forgive me. Those words hit me hard. He asked me to tell the truth about what I was going to tell him after he got the promotion. He knew me and guessed right when he said he was sure I was going to ask him to reject the promotion. I couldn't answer, and it was clear to everyone that he was right. I had been behaving badly at work. His story made more sense. People looked at me like they wanted to spit on me. Ben called me a poisonous, disloyal, toxic witch and said he didn't ever want anything to do with me. I told him that our lives were intertwined. We bought a house together and we were working in the same place. Our jobs would most definitely require us to interact. To talk to each other, this was my way of saying that he could never leave me, that we were stuck together. Ben laughed and told me that he was moving to his new big office on another floor, so I would get to see him as much as I see snow in the summer. Everyone laughed at those words, but that wasn't all. He told me that he got a new place and that he had put the house we bought together on the market. He clearly didn't want to. I was on my knees on the floor, begging him to stay, but he just walked away. I grabbed his feet and started saying sorry, asking him to forgive me and telling him I'd never do it again. I said I loved him, but he didn't care. He asked me to let go of his leg, but I wouldn't. He said I was embarrassing myself and that I should just accept that I was the worst person on earth and move on. Ben told me to let him go several times, but I didn't listen. I kept begging, but then he looked back at me. His eyes were blazing with anger. I realized I'd made a mistake and that he hated me. I was clearly the most hated person in the world. With one strong pull, Ben pulled his leg out of my grasp. I begged him, telling him that I couldn't live without him. He told me that I should have thought about that when I was being so cruel and thoughtless. He walked away. I could see eyes on me from all angles of the office. I wanted the earth to swallow me, but the next best thing happened. I had a panic attack and fainted, but not before I muttered, "Please, Ben. I can't live without you." The next thing I knew, I woke up at the hospital with no one by my side, not even Ben. It saddened my heart to I want you to know that we don't exist anymore. I really want to get him back. I need him. I promised to make it up to him. Please tell me what I should do. I'm desperate for your advice and help. Hello? I'm here again. The worst has happened to me. I had to fill you guys in with everything that's going on. Yes, Ben had declared our relationship over. The breakup hurts more than anything. But it wasn't just the breakup that hurt. After our breakup, I was blindsided by my demotion. The head of the department, which was the position I held with pride, was taken from me. That was after everything that went down that day at the office. On top of that, Ben exposed me for sleeping my way to the top. The company decided I wasn't qualified for the position. Maybe if I start from scratch, it will be. It's a good thing for me, so I'll learn what it means to truly work hard for something. Now I have to watch Ben every day from below. I sit at a smaller desk in the same office where I used to stand tall, give directives, run meetings and hold everything together. Now that power dynamic has changed, every day feels like a cruel reminder of what I've lost. Watching Ben ascend with the same confidence I used to love is sometimes agonizing. I catch a glimpse of him and for a split second I wish things had never changed. I wish I hadn't treated him that way, he didn't deserve it. I wish I could still be the one at his side, both in work and in life. It wasn't just the professional hit that stings, it was also the emotional one. There were moments when I could still feel his presence and it reminded me of everything I thought we were. I see him laughing with his coworker. I felt like a knife was twisting in my chest as I realized I was no longer the source of his happiness and couldn't even share in his moments. I tried to bury my head in work, but it was impossible to ignore the way people in the office looked at me. They all know what has happened between us. I also have to deal with the demotion, which is the worst part. Everyone knows about him and the breakup, and they're all looking at me with pity or speaking ill of me. Some even pretend to say sorry as if they know what it's like to fall from the top and be forced to watch the person you love rise higher. I tell myself I can survive this, that I can rebuild my life and mend my reputation, but I feel like I'm drowning each day. I wake up with a pit in my stomach, knowing what it feels like to walk into the office and see Ben ignore me and people talking negatively about me there. There are times when I wonder if it's some kind of punishment for pushing him too hard and pushing us too hard. I was too focused on being demanding and selfish. Sometimes I wish I could forget it all, forget the way he looked at me when we first started seeing each other like I was the only one that mattered. Now I feel like I'm invisible. I can't even forget the way he loved me and the way I loved him. It torments me every day. There were days I couldn't bring myself to go to work. It became difficult, given what I went through at the office every day. There's a part of me that wants to walk away and quit. I've tried to move on, but there's still a part of me that believes we are together. I keep coming to work thinking that maybe seeing me will remind him of what we had before it all fell apart. He'll realize how sorry I am and his heart will soften. He'll forgive me and we'll be together again. Forgive me and love me back, but then this happened. I remember the moment so vividly. Ben walked towards me, and for a second I let myself feel hope. Maybe there was some light in all of this. My heart leapt, and I was thinking he was coming to offer some support, maybe even some comfort. But then he handed me a letter and said, "The company thinks you should quit. They say your presence is affecting their productivity." Then he walked away before I could even say a word to him. He didn't turn back. I felt the room spin around me and my heart sank. It was like every bit of control and dignity had been stripped away from me. This wasn't just a job. It was everything I'd worked for and sacrificed for. Now I was being tossed aside like I didn't matter. It felt like my existence was a hindrance. I had to face the fact that I'd lost everything that mattered to me. I had so many questions, but I didn't know where to start. My heart was broken into a million tiny pieces. I didn't know how to go on from there. Maybe one day I'll move on and stop caring about him, but it's hard because everything inside me is falling apart. This is going to last for a while. From my last post, I got a lot of hate. I've seen comments here saying I am an abuser and a manipulator. I know I did a lot of things wrong, but I'm human and I'm trying to be a better person now. I'd like to agree with most of you that I deserve what's happening to me, but no one should ever have to go through this. I wish I could explain why I did what I did to him, but I can't. Some things just I don't have easy answers, so please move on with your life. I'll try to move on with mine, but I can't give any guarantees because I'm still in a lot of pain. Thanks for reading, and for sticking with me through this, I appreciate it more than you know. I'm not sure what comes next, but I know life is unpredictable, and all I can do is hold on and hope things get better.